we, and it's only for the people that fly. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have planes and they might fly, if they're flying 2 hours a year, that's really kind of they're not really one of the main flyers out there. I mean, but people that, have a logbook that fly at least, 20 hours a year or something, then they go someplace, they use their plane. So I think those are the people that should be compensated for. So that's what I want you.
How easy would that information be to get? Flying who's?
Well, everybody kind of knows who flies and who doesn't fly.
That's not understanding.
No, I'm just saying, no, you can have them bring in their aircraft logbook. You can see that how many hours the plane flew in the period of year. It's real easy. So.
Are you actually going to relocate your plane?
Yes.
Yeah. And where are you going?
We're going to go to Kelso. We have a hangar we're to rent over there.
They had a hangar?
Yeah, I'm going to rent a hangar that another guy's going somewhere else.
Okay.
So
well, you were lucky because, those are hard.
People aren't that way. And, there's a lot of planes out there that are fabric and they can't be outside, so they have to go farther away. One gentleman has to go 70 miles away just to put his plane in a hangar so he can fly it. But then he's got to drive 70 miles both ways just to go use his airplane. So
he's a helicopter.
I know. That's a different rating. That's what we're looking for. We're just looking for some kind of compensation. And, like I said, you can have them bring in a logbook, aircraft logbook, and it'll show you how many hours the plane's flown. And that's real easy because, I fly a bunch of different planes. So at least my one plane there, I flew for 50 hours last year, so, so.
You have one plane?
Yeah. We have two. Me and my twin brother have two, yeah. Okay.
You're serious flyers.
Well, we're the ones that do all the formation stuff. So we do all the air shows and stuff like that for around the area that we do for free. So, okay. All right. Just okay. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in.
Helpful.
Any other, go ahead.
Hello. Good morning.
Nice hat. Like it,
Matt. Steve Toski. I'm here as a personal reference to Peter and Jessica Etero, the owners of Fred's Marina. I moored my boat at Fred's in 2018 and 2019 when my wife Robin and I stayed in Portland. I've moored it there temporarily for spring fishing for at least the last 2 years. I've seen firsthand the before and after of Fred's since Peter and Jessica bought the marina in 2021. The docks are improved in that they have been repaired and are safer. Many of the docks had flotation issues, which have been fixed. The place looks better than it ever has. It's very nice. I'm still a customer at Fred's. When I fish or take my family and friends by boat to the Portland area, I always stop into Fred's for gas, snacks, and drinks, gear, or whatever the needs are. The store is clean and is fully stocked. Jessica and Peter have long-term employees, Creon and Ray, both of whom are very friendly, helpful, and welcoming. The boat ramp, moorage, and parking lots are quite serviceable and convenient. The bathrooms are clean. Fred's is a fun place to stop and always a place of interest. Fred's has a fishing community with the daily catches in the spring written down on chalkboard. The weights of the fish and the names of the boats that caught them are up on the board for some fun information. I'm delighted that the commission, Sean Clark, and the Marina Planning Committee has hit upon the idea of a concessionaire to try to solve some of the pieces of the puzzle to keep the Scappoose Bay Marina and boat ramp open and fully serviceable for recreational boating for the next 20 years. I wanted to give my strong personal endorsement to the port of Peter and Jessica for consideration for holding the master lease. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other public comment? I see Jerry Cole has his hand up. Is there anyone else in the room that'd like to comment? Okay. Jerry, we see your hands up. Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So my name's Jerry Cole. I live here in Rainier. I'm the mayor. I recently attended the open house regarding the runway rehab. I went there as a candidate for county commissioner just because I like to stay informed on county issues. I want to say that I appreciate the efforts that's gone into the planning of this important work, and the staff and your engineers were great. They answered all the questions that were put out there and stuff. I can't say enough about how good they did. And I don't have a plane, so I don't have a dog in the fight. But you know, it's still important to me. That said, I left the meeting with a concern. Uh, there'll be real negative financial impact to the non-commercial hangar tenants. And I think you heard the part of it too, where, you know, really it's the people that are constantly flying. You know, there are some tenants out there that they haven't flown their planes in a long time, you know, so maybe they, in all fairness, wouldn't be part of it. But several tenants, they shared with me last night that they'll be paying rent in Scappoose while also covering costs in other airports, like you heard Kelso. I heard some other airports as well. While I fully support the decision to provide relief to the commercial tenants, I respectfully ask the commission to consider the impact on the non-commercial tenants. They've had long-term contributions to the airport. They're part of the local aviation community, and their hardship during the closure deserves thoughtful attention. Providing some assistance or accommodation for these tenants would help ensure fairness and maintain trust with the airport community without undermining the overall project. Again, I want to thank you guys for your consideration, for the work that you're doing. You know, you guys are doing great, and the improvements that you're making to the airport. And like I said, this is just I don't have an airplane. I went just because I wanted to learn, and that's kind of what I left with. I just wanted to share that in public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a good day.
Any other public comment? Anybody else online? Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward with the consent agenda.
Move to adopt the consent agenda?
Second. There is a check in there for Clatskanie Builder Supply, which I'm a principal financial owner, so that my vote will not include that check.
Thank you, Robert. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So moved. Old business. We are actually gonna, just to be mindful of Lignetics time here, we're gonna move item D here to A. So
Move it up.
yeah, all right, yeah.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
For an update. The bag house project has not been approved by DEQ.
We submitted a notice to construct, I believe, last week. We are going to move forward with moving the equipment on site. So we can build the system while we're waiting on approval. You don't want to delay the project like we did last time with the scrubber.
Quick question, non-approved, they denied it or just? Oh, gotcha, yeah, just how it goes. Okay, thanks.
And they're very slow. We found that out in the last project.
The guy who's coming.
The company owns the bulk of the equipment already, so we're working on freight and rigging to get that brought in to here, so we can assemble it and have it prepped and ready to go. So as soon as we have approval, we can just make the final connections. That's the plan right now. We don't have a time frame on their approval yet. It's just been taking longer than what the consultants have told us. We basically, once it's assembled, it will only take a couple of days to attach it to the system and start using it. So
Okay, thank you very much.
pretty straightforward. The scrubber project, we had the supplier come out and audit the system as working as advertised, so. And then there's been no formal testing by DEQ because they're still reviewing the overall permit. Yeah, it's taken years to get to this point, so.
We know what that's like, trust me. So yeah.
Out of, the permit renewal, so far 3 years.
Well-oiled machine.
Yeah, we have another site in Oregon that they've had the permit renewal for 7 years.
Oh, geez.
That's speed.
And what they tell you is
It's
personnel, lack of personnel.
short-handed and understaffed and have a lot of permits to go through. They started the bigger companies and worked their way down to the little ones like us, so.
So there are people behind you then?
Hundreds probably.
I don't know how this important this site is to your portfolio, but we can definitely lean a little bit on the regional solutions team to see if we can get some help, but no guarantees, but they can.
Basically, we just keep operating on our own.
That's how that system works, so.
I would like to do that because I feel like Magnetics has done a lot, the neighbors have done a lot to work well with them and.
Yeah, I agree.
Back to the bag house. Initially, we're told this was a simple change and it should be approved within a few weeks. We just don't know what's gonna happen.
This would be a good time of year to get it in.
Yeah, it'd be a great time here to get it in, so, and there's already existing pad in place, so. Some equipment that was previously there, so you don't anticipate any construction delays once everything's on site.
I appreciate your update and your time. Thank you.
Steve, John, I got a question for you. We previously talked about some sort of testing to figure out where the contamination's coming from or dust, whatever. Has there been any progress on that?
We had our contact at Paul Foster. She left and went to another firm, and I need to follow back up with them, re-engage with the folks that would actually be doing that. I can find out for sure.
Okay. This is about the time of year where we really start seeing more impact. I think.
Oh, for sure.
It's been windy. Yeah. And less moisture and rain to.
Is there any evidence that if the city and Fort went in together to DEQ, tried to make an impression on them?
Just the email sent asking about the testing prospects, and it sounds like they were looking to wait till the bag house issue was and then test after that. But we can, if that could be delayed, we could, find out if they can do testing sooner.
Do we need to do it through DEQ? Can we just go through an
I
independent?
guess the only concern would be probably, but the only concern would be, would they be okay with the results, the test results, knowing it wasn't them doing it, like similar to Brentwood Avenue where like we want them involved as much as possible so they can't dispute any of our findings.
Yeah, what kind of legal standing, I guess, with the question, if they're,
Well, but if you're waiting 7 years for things, I mean, waiting for them, I would think they would be grateful to have.
I agree, but I think we would,
The consultant will help.
Even if it's not something DEQ accepts, if we can determine where it's coming from, I think that's useful. It's coming from Lignetics or if it's dust flowing in from somewhere else.
Their water pile.
Yeah, just knowing the source if possible. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have to wait for that.
Yeah, because again, this delay is, it's beyond our control. But we have the control over being able to find other sources to help us do this. And at least like Brian's saying, at least then we have information. Right now, we're just guessing.
And pending cost, obviously, if this costs millions of dollars to do, that's a different.
Yeah.
If it costs $20,000 or something.
Sure. I'm just curious then who we would even look to outsource to be some type of third party, but we could certainly look into
The
it.
consultant should be able to help that out.
Okay.
I wonder if we can make an exception for public comment. Scott has come here. He was at the meeting yesterday and he came with a specific point to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd support that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for coming.
So I was at the meeting when they were discussing the upgrades to the maintenance of the airstrip, the main runway and everything. And what became obvious was that there was a very specific what we can do related to the FAA was going to pay for. And they said, we'll only do this, and kind of tied the hands of everyone in the process, because there are some things that, well, if you did a little bit more, it would in the future be way more efficient, like some lighting and everything. And I brought up that, well, what would preclude a private contribution to having, private-public kind of partnership to do while they're digging in the ground. And that ground is very rocky soil, so you can't just trench it. It's while you're digging an extra 10 feet, when you have all set up, it's a smart time to do it. But I understand this is what we can do because the FAA is gonna be paying for it. If there were private funds that would say, while you guys are in there, could you do this extra stuff that would save us 90% of the cost when it comes time to put the lighting in? Because while you were in there digging, we did do the extra 10 feet to say, hey, when we go to do this, all we're doing is strapping some light fixtures on and voila, it's done. So
Just you're talking conduit junction boxes for type of future planning type stuff for lighting
they're
and.
taking 2 main lines and it's a loop, and that's all they're doing. Well, if where the egress off of the runway, there should be some lights so that you don't run off the runway and ruin your landing gear and everything. And while they're digging, it's just a branch. There's 10 branches that run. And then if you do that, then when they go to do that, they don't have to close the airport down. And you could see from the meeting last night, it impacts a lot of the people who fly out of there on a regular basis. What you didn't see is it impacts a lot of the other airports too, because Scappoose is a very common runway for other airports to come and practice. So it's used a lot. Anyway, so I was just saying, are you guys opposed to some private funding or see if we can work something out that would?
Certainly won't speak for the rest of the commission, but for myself, I mean, obviously we would entertain thoughts, but I mean, Lacey's kind of been the one spearheading this is the word I'll use, and it'd be interesting because you're going to be basically having communications with the contractor as well, whoever that is, right? So then
I was talking with the engineers and they're not adverse to it. In fact, they kind of go, well, that would make a whole lot more sense while they're digging to do it. But the constraints that Lacey has with how if it's being funded and what they're allowed to do or what will be paid for. And I'm just thinking if we could figure out a way to bring some private money in that would make up for while they already have the equipment there, the contractor saying, hey, so it kind of at least has to have, I would think, you guys tacit blessing that a private.
Yeah, if it made sense and Lacey, without having more information who the contractor was and stuff, I don't think again, speaking for myself, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be against being proactive for steps for something like that to something that would make sense. I just, without having outreach to Lacey on this mainly, because she's going to be the boots on the ground here that knows exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate
The
it.
important thing is that Scott and I did talk to James at Century West, and he was not at all opposed. In fact, he was in favor of this, and he said it is possible, and there's conversations that need to be had. That's basically why I asked Scott to come here this morning to explain how, just to get the ball rolling. Have the conversation.
I really appreciate it.
Sure, we're all in agreement as long as it doesn't add any time to the.
Well, right, no, that it has to not extend it or whatever. But having the equipment there, even though
yes,
it's rocky, it's right next to the runway. It makes sense to, if at all possible, do it while they're digging everything up because there'll be some extra cans or conduit and everything, but come up with some private funding for that, just get it done. And then when that stuff is put in later on, it's just, you're bolting the fixtures and you're not closing the runway down. And if you're doing the other stuff that's in the future, that's on the Alpha and Bravo. Those are on the sides and you can phase those and not close the runway down.
100%. It sounds, the intent is certainly, I totally get the intent. I think it's a great idea. We'll have to dig further into it, but thank you for the comment.
Your last name for the record, please.
Niche, Neish.
That's what I want to thank.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I will end at that point in time because as my friends say, don't ask Scott what time it is. He'll tell you how to make a watch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, returning back to old business, we'll start with the Columbia Pacific Biorefinery. Doug,
For a second.
Yep.
Did Jan or Kim have comments around magnetics? Did we want to?
we,
Well, all I would say at this point
If
is,
you're gonna talk, Jim, please come up.
Sorry to.
I asked for public. I didn't know if that's totally fine.
Hey, give us your
thank
name.
you for letting me talk.
Start with your name.
Dan Hollenberger,
Thank you.
neighborhood resident. I'm pleased. I know that Steve and Lignetics have actually performed on what they said they would at this point. And of course, as you discussed, the DEQ situation is really the problem that we have, and they have the capacity to slow everything down. So, we're still hoping that we're in April now, that by June, it would be wonderful if the bag house, since they're ready to roll on it, could be done. So any power or any influence that anybody has would be greatly appreciated, because our experience last summer with the improvements that were made with the scrubber, the cyclone and those things was that there was, I felt like, some improvement. I think it depends on which neighbor you ask, but I really felt like there was some improvement. But I think we really need this last piece to see what our maximum improvement is going to be. I guess sometimes the elephant in the room is the Clearwater situation that's just further down. And it remains to be seen if on a windy summer day when they're dropping that stuff on a barge, does that get down here? You do see it in the river. You can see it in the river itself. So it pollutes the river. But, at this point, Lignetics has performed as they said they would. And so I appreciate everyone's collective efforts to work through that. So, I'm still hopeful that the DEQ situation is a problem.
Big problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Jan.
kind of feel like she mentioned power to talk to these folks. We have the access, but the power is the fact that the neighbors and the industry are working together. So that's not the case in all the DEQ's issues right now. So hopefully that the regional solutions folks. We've got this solved for you. Just give us our permits.
Okay, well, thank you, Jan. Columbia Pacific Biorefinery quarterly update, Doug Lentz, he's online.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So quick update, as you guys everyone's aware of, we went through our 3-month clean out to switch off from renewable diesel to our new customer who's bringing through ethanol. We received our first unit train on Monday. We completed that last night. It'll be released this morning. As far as vessel movement, I don't have anything on the schedule currently, but we are anticipating something in the early part of May. We're waiting, a second unit train is being released currently, and then probably a third before a vessel even arrives. Other than that, we continue with all the inspections, audits, and regulatory requirements that the facility has been involved with since the beginning. That concludes my report, unless there's questions.
Just real quick, how many ships are we thinking ethanol wise? Is this beginning of something? Is this going to be a short-term thing or hopefully long-term or how on that, Doug?
Well, it is a 5-year contract with this customer. They're developing markets. It's all export markets. So as far as Columbia Pacific is involved with, we are not involved in any of that logistics or contract. We're just we're the handler loading the vessels. It is our anticipation that it'll start slow and ramp up, but that is just an anticipation.
Can you say where you're at on the construction of the tanks? Is that still on hold or?
It's on hold. We received another extension due to the seismic analysis ongoing. So we've received another 2-year extension on the tanks. That's where that's at.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any?
That off, sorry.
Okay, hearing no other questions there. We appreciate it, Doug, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Marina update. Looks like Miriam and Lindsay as well, if you both want to come up or it's separately.
No, I am. Hello, commissioners. I would like to give you an update on the Marina Planning Committee meeting on Monday. And Commissioner Buell and Sorber were there. I know that Commissioner Ward observed online too, so I know you're up to speed. And for the others here in the public, the meeting, I will put the recording online before the end of the week. It was a fairly straightforward or a shorter meeting than we've had in the past. And we had one committee member who requested staff time allocations percentages by job title because we had looked before at compensation percentage by the percentage. So they wanted to know kind of what the overhead was. And it was just, greater clarity around administrative and operational overhead associated with managing Marina. And following that discussion, we moved into the privatization discussion. Peter Etro and Jessica Etro were both here from Friends Marina. And we talked through that. If you have any questions, I know that the commissioners who were present could answer them. I could answer them, but I'll put the recording up. It was high level discussion. I'm sure you're privy to, that we've been having those and that there is a proposal out there. And that's really it, unless you have any comments or questions.
I would like a copy of that staff time allocation. That's what I've been looking at.
I can send that to you. Okay, perfect. Yep. Thank you to Guy Glenn Jr. for getting that to me in advance of the meeting. And yeah, I'll forward that to all of you. Okay, perfect. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, one more thing, actually. The committee agreed that we would not convene again until after we come to a material decision or make progress on that conversation with Fred's Marina. And that we'll convene, after we decide on that.
And that will come, obviously we need a proposal to work through, obviously, and commission could have look at it and then we could move that. So
Perfect.
Up there.
All right. Thank you.
General Marina. Well, I think it means Miriam's probably going to have to come up. Any update on or further issue with fishing in the navigational area or off the docks or anything like that?
Nothing has changed since our last discussion about that, other than that we're waiting for our legal department to be able to fit in their scheduled time to create an ordinance.
Okay.
And then signs will be posted, social outreach, things like that. So we're just kind of in a holding pattern until that happens.
Right.
Are you still seeing it going on?
Oh, yes.
Still a constant issue that
Yes.
Marshall and whoever's down there is having to.
It will most likely because the season and the weather will get worse.
I figured, yeah.
My understanding, not being a fisher person, is that it was basically during sturgeon season. And is sturgeon season still on?
It's not even really a sturgeon season. It's because it's catch and release, but
That's not closed at any.
yeah, it's people are in there and it did really ramp up the issue when those sturgeon, when I was younger, the sturgeon weren't in there like that. And for whatever reason, after we dredged and stuff, it seems like the last 10 years-ish, you really started hearing about them in there a lot. And that brought a crowd with it. So.
And they closed some, like we're on Rooster Rock where they were pooling up. I think they closed catch and release even. So those folks had to find new spots.
Yeah. Yes.
But if the sturgeon aren't there, are they still there? That's really basically my question.
You're gonna have some people in there fishing, but
All the
not
time.
to the extent of, you're not gonna have a 26-foot boat right off our dock trying to guide, run guided trips.
Okay.
But yeah,
In general, it's commensurate with the fish that are in there. There will be some, people will still fish for them as they slowly move out, so.
Need to make it more attractive away from.
need to random kayaks they could fish off of. Yeah, they're fishing kayak, yes. Yes, exactly.
I hear a lot of positive feedback around potentially working a deal. We won't know till we know, but we're moving into budget season. So I kind of take it that the budget should be built with a bias towards doing this contracting unless we find a deal killer in here somewhere, because we're going to be, it's a big swing in the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's a pretty complex issue, though. I mean, there's, I don't know if there's things that we can figure out we don't need to do at all. There are things that the person we're hiring may not be expecting, that we're expecting them to do. So it's what we do is very complex there, and it's going to take some time to do it right.
I agree. Yeah, no.
I agree with Chip. Like, are we missing, or is the operator getting the revenue? What revenue are we losing? What savings are we actually seeing? Because,
that's why
we're still paying our staff and employees and that sort of thing. Those are all things I'd like to see. And it's tough timing because we are looking at budget. So depending on which way we go.
We're kind of, Bob's on vacation and he's going to be kind of the one spearheading some of that. I think Amy potentially will be involved, at least wise, I'm assuming, and Sean as well. I'm hoping we have a quote unquote, we obviously need to do our due diligence here. We don't want to rush into this, but I do understand the urgency of wanting that done. I think there were some really great ideas floated by Bob and Nancy. We've discussed it. I think we're going to be pretty safe there. But I do understand what you're saying, and Chip as well. I know there's always going to be some unforeseens on something like this. And hopefully we can have an open dialogue with Peter if it works out, and we can sort through them. So
we have a very robust list of duties and things that are happening down at the arena. We're going to sit down and go through that list and talk with Cody James to see what he may be willing to take on some of that and figure out and make sure that Peter and company understands the whole spectrum of things that we would expect, or whatever negotiations that we do, and then figuring out the capital piece of it. So that'll be the big part for us.
And as part of that, would there be some sort of financial analysis showing us the thing? Yeah, okay, that's really important.
Budget without it.
Yeah.
any more on that? Good. Airport update.
Name. I'm going to talk about last night today. So first of all, Amy and Lindsay, thank you for joining the meeting yesterday. I think we had about 50 people. Would you 30 to 50? Yeah, 50 people who attended. My takeaway last night was there were two main takeaways, and what those were. It was the people who were there really just wanted their who, what, why, when, and how. How did this project start? When did it start? A really deep understanding of why we need to do this today, this summer, understanding the construction project of, why 800 feet needs to be rebuilt from the ground up and why the other 4,300 feet is perfectly fine the way it is, and just a really deep understanding. Century West did an amazing job of explaining and answering those questions. And then the second takeaway is that the financial aspect of it for our T hangar tenants. We heard them. I would say I heard them loud and clear, and Mr. Pizzo was here earlier explaining it, but essentially is what does the compensation look like for not having access to the runway? We've talked about solutions for this, whether it's based on flying or potentially, passing on a CPI increase for a time period, we could look into those numbers. But as a reminder, the total 90-day T-hanger revenue was about 91,000. So that would be.
Is that for the 3-month period?
3 months,
Okay, thank you.
so $30,000 a year, a month, 91 for the entirety of the project. So whatever that looks like, but that was the other piece of my big takeaway was, what are you doing for those of us who have to leave? I hope they felt heard. I definitely heard them. I thought it was a pretty good meeting. It started to turn a little, take a turn, but we've, went back the other direction. And I think overall it was, we left feeling pretty good and hearing them. One of the things we provided for our tenant, for anybody who was there, was a comment option to make, because, people have been adverse to coming to the commission and commenting or sharing their position. And so we provided a comment section on our website. And I did get 2 emails within the last, since last night. So I can pass those around.
Can you just kind of summarize?
Sure. This one was just hostile crowd, but I felt like the position, quick note, sorry, it's very casual. I left before 6, but the direction seemed pretty clear. But this gentleman, this is from Dean Sandow, was just that he felt like the communication is good and that it was a clear message from the engineers and the port. And then this one was engineers and the port did a great job explaining the requirements and limitations and what the FAA will provide and will not provide. No one's really happy about the closure, the T-hanger tenants, but we understand that these things the infrastructure needs to be maintained. So those were 2. I'm glad that someone did follow up on that.
Name on the second one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mark Zetz. So I can share those if you want. Does anybody have any questions about last night?
I don't have a question about last night, but maybe in general, trying to get an understanding of the financials. I appreciate the 90,000 over 3 months. So we're looking at like 30,000 a month for T-hanger income. Hate to put you on the spot. If you had to guess, how many of those T-hanger tenants actively fly?
A rough percentage.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I'm curious. Just kind of ballparking. I mean, it's
40%.
Okay.
Maybe 40 to 50%. I could go back and look and find.
That's fine. That's good.
I could get you a hard number on that, but I would say, I met a gentleman out there this last week and he's moving hangers. And he said, I haven't flown in the last 6 months, and he has a beautiful brand new plane. And that was I just haven't been able to get out here. I live an hour and a half away. I mean, I get that. That's tough. So, he would be one that we would consider flies, but he hasn't flown in the last 6 months.
Does it skew more towards the summer months?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, it's beautiful and it's not cold.
Yeah. I was out there on Saturday, I think, and there was a ton of activity. It was really cool to see, but it got me thinking like, yeah, this does really impact people.
It does. And, I think one of the gentlemen, Scott, maybe had mentioned, we do get a significant amount of traffic from Pearson, Hillsborough, Kelso, Woodland, all over. I mean, and they will be also back. But also Kelso will be closing this fall as well. And there's a lot of other airports that are going through this.
People are coming in. You say from all these other airports. Are they just doing touch and goes? That's all they're doing
at the time.
Okay.
Typically, I will get a phone call if someone's going to hang around and where can I go or,
Fueling also.
And so.
Definitely got me thinking a bit more about, I know we have some limitations in staff resources and whatnot, but we have a lot of people touching our runway
Yes.
that are not paying anything.
Absolutely.
And I know you track a lot of these things, probably go to conferences and whatnot. In the future, I'd be very curious if there's some technology that comes out that would allow us to track that and maybe charge people.
Well, we can track it now on Flight Aware. You can look up that data if you have a membership on how many airplanes will come to Scapa Airport. We don't pay for that at this point, but Noah does, so we can always get that information from him. But typically untowered airports don't charge because you need your tower to track that.
Okay, yeah.
Right, so that's kind of.
That's why they like.
Tower, you know, there's.
Yeah. Costs a whole bunch of money to build the tower and staff it and all that, yeah.
So if you go to the iFly website, it talks about fueling prices. And I think when many years ago, when I used to ride with my dad and turn green out there doing touch and goes, it was for fuel. You would do a series of touch and goes, with the less expensive fuel. So I think any runway charges or anything are kind of not so good for our WBO.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I think
we might get some revenue, but then.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't after a while because they're touch and going for fuel. And if it costs to land, then
yeah,
there's no fuel savings.
Just curiosity, the gentleman that I was up here before out of the gate that made public comment on potential rent reduction and being able to show flight logs. How big of a, I'll just use the word dumpster fire, would that be? Trying to.
How about administrative burden? Is that a fair term?
So just to add the comment on the percentage of the folks. So
yeah,
we're saying 40% of the people roughly are flying, right? So how many people are out there?
Can I jump in, Lacey, so you can do all at once here? My thought I was going to ask is, I would feel comfortable if the commission decides if we're going to rebate or not, and if so, give an amount of money and have the committee help pick, because I could see 3 or 4 scenarios you could pick that are gonna make some people happy and some not. And I mean, if I hadn't flown at all last year, but now this year I retired so I could go fly, I'd be upset. So you're never gonna win, but if the committee helps select it, then you've got.
Make a recommendation.
Yeah.
Through the committee.
Yeah, I think the only way you're gonna be able to do it correctly, because then everybody's gonna say that I was gonna fly there.
Yeah,
we still have to some basis.
Yeah.
I do think what he brought up, I don't know if it's possible staff wise. I'm not, what he did bring up does make a little bit of sense, certainly. And that's what, just to dovetail up, Brian's, inquiry there on, percentages of people flying. So let's say, there's X amount of folks, we're saying 40% of those people are flying. I'm just curious, what that looks like, if it's even possible, like that's.
Well, and it seems, wouldn't it be appropriate to put the burden on them, not.
No, certainly, they would apply, they would have to apply in, yeah, exactly.
I have a thought we talk about. I know in talking to James and Pete, yeah, that abating T hangars has never been done for airport closure, right? I want to acknowledge that. And also our closure is a lot longer than most other airport closures. So in the interest of not setting a crazy precedent, my thought was maybe we abate 1 month's rent, acknowledging that our closure is longer. We're not abating all 3. And it essentially be like half of the 30,000 if it's actually 50% of people that fly, and we'd be looking at a number of like 15K potentially on the upper end, and folks would have to apply. I love Robert's idea. Show us that you're actually flying. And if you have the situation where you're retired, show us tell us you're retired and you're planning on flying more. Maybe I haven't flown as much in the past, but at least have some sort of process to evaluate that. Let the committee take a look at it. They make a recommendation to us and we go from there on a maximum of a month.
So
I don't think a month is enough.
So it depends on how you, so I could be swayed either way here. I'm just worried about administratively.
Yes.
This is some of my worry. So it's either, or you come up with something where just a month of it is reduced for everyone on this 3-month closure, which I know that's significantly more money, another $15,000 roughly. And you could just do that cleanly across the board where you're not going to have to deal with, Brian got, he got rebate on, you know, on his rent, but Nick didn't. And I was gonna fly this month. It's gonna be a mess, I feel like, but maybe not.
Lacey.
So to your point, I feel like there is, and I know we've talked about this, there's the FAA equity clause in our grant agreements. So if we're gonna abate for a 1 month, it should be just everybody across the board.
Regardless of whether or not.
Or we go with the 3 months and we do an application process where we show, we could go over what those standards would be for the application process. Unfortunately, our next advisory committee meeting isn't scheduled till the end of June, and this starts on
Yeah.
June 8th. Not that we couldn't have another conversation or a Zoom meeting or, you know, have a special meeting for this. But that is something to keep in mind. The clock is kind of ticking.
Can you help me understand the equity clause a little bit?
Our grant agreements, all of them for decades now, there is a clause that essentially says you have to treat everybody fair and equal. So one of the things we did with our rent abatement for commercial tenants is we said, everybody, their base lease amount is, we're abating that, whether it's 500 or 6,000, it's just across the board. You know, it's not extra for anybody else, or he's just getting your base rent abated for that time period. And that's just the equity piece. That is incredibly important to the FAA. And what I would be concerned about is if someone felt they were being unfairly treated that didn't perhaps get their rent abated because they haven't flown in the last 12 calendar months, there could be a complaint to the FAA. And then we're now dealing just with that little piece of it. So that, because if someone was feeling unfairly treated because their rent didn't get abated and somebody else's did, in terms of T-hanger tenants, I could see that being an issue, and I just want to make sure. So I do feel that it's either
Yeah, all or nothing, yeah.
all or nothing, and not all 3 months or not
A month.
or whatever you guys decide. But I do want to bring that piece up because the FAA makes that a very, very high point in all of their contracts, and we're obligated to do that. I know.
And most certainly, somebody's gonna, you know, out of that many people, that just the odds are not gonna be in your favor for somebody not to be upset about it. I mean, I could think of scenarios right now in my head. Let's say if you're a frequent flyer and you're getting your plane overhauled, probably takes a while. Probably not gonna have any log time in the last 6 months, or there's all kinds of different scenarios. So, I mean, and admin time alone, just not wanting to sift through I'm sure you'd love that. Yeah.
Honestly,
How many T-hanger tenants is it? The total number?
Well, we have a few T-hanger tenants that have 2 or 3 hangers. Probably say in the 70s or 80s.
Okay, so a maximum of 80 applications if everybody were to ask.
It could be.
Yeah, which is not a small.
I mean, there are some that I know won't apply for it. Because they're not.
And that if we have an application process and somebody doesn't apply, it's no longer an equity issue because they had the opportunity.
They've had, as long as the opportunity is provided.
That makes sense. Okay. And I would maybe ask if Bob has some time to take a look at that equity clause and see what, like, this is speculative a little bit, right? Because other than him, none of us are attorneys.
Sure.
Be curious as his thoughts on what all we can and can't do around the equity clause.
A legal learning memo?
Yes, I'm sure he can give.
Well, and I think also Century West would be a good source for the equity.
Yes.
Because
Yeah, that's great.
these are the people who deal with it all over the,
Strongly agree.
yeah,
I don't know, are we kind of on the consensus here that we want to look into?
yes.
Which one of these do we need a motion to dive into this?
At first, I do what Nancy thinks would be an equitable. I'm kind of with her. I've kind of had 50% reduction, which would be about 45,000 over just a number, but, and the thing about flying so many hours, the more I think about that, I mean, I rent tools. Doesn't matter if it was available for the last 5 years, if you rented it for tomorrow and it doesn't work, you were paying for access. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you've been flying or not, your rent money goes for access. So,
yeah,
I'm not hung up on the 50% number.
I just want to, go ahead, sorry.
to me, up until you mentioned the equity issue, it's like, these people are literally having to pay double rent. And when they're going out and getting a new place to put their plane for a few months, they're paying more than they're paying. Because frankly, these other airports are gouging them because they know. So to me, that's really important. And one of the most impactful statements that was made last night actually came from someone who doesn't fly. Alta Lynch said, "You have reinstated the port tax. Why isn't this available to give to the people at the airport?" These are the people who are actually using it. This is what tax money is all about. It was like, wow, I couldn't agree more. Thought I hadn't really concentrated on, but it seemed to make a whole lot of sense. And is there other places we could be spending that money? Absolutely. But these people who are regular flyers, now, I have a trouble saying that people who never fly should get a rent abatement, but that's maybe the world we live in. But particularly the people that are constant flyers.
So are we leaning towards maybe like a half rent abatement for the whole period?
I
kind of where I'm a third, you're thinking a half, or is there any?
They can hold.
I'll make a motion once we're kind of in a.
Yeah, so I would like, so I have no problem with that. I think that's a great, Robert. I kind of want to know direction from Lacey on what's the cleanest to do this, because it's easy for us to say, $45,000 or whatever the number is, 30, whatever it is. What's the cleanest way? I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but to make this easy and painless and make everybody happy, which I know is impossible, but.
Sure. I mean, honestly, for me, it's just 50% off or 40%, whatever you guys decide, and not having to go through an application process as you brought up.
Well, can I just insert really quick that if our engineer was here, what they would say was the cleanest is to not abate T-hanger rent, because there is no precedent in the state of Oregon to do so.
Right.
Yeah.
And that will not make me a popular person if anyone ever watches this video, but that would be the cleanest. Yeah.
So they will say.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they said it last night, and that's what we've been kind of going with at this point.
Yeah.
In terms of your question specifically, obviously abating it just 50% or 40 or whatever you decide, that would be the cleanest process for the staff. Obviously, it's just simply be that. Any kind of application process is going to cost admin time and so on and so forth. So, and even just abating it 50% will be admin time for our admin department. So, but.
Is James online?
I know Pete was on.
Okay, yes. Let's ask James.
Ask him about.
What a dangerous thing that I spoke for him. I didn't know he was on.
James, are you available?
I am actually. Thanks, Amy. Put me on the spot there.
Amy actually just.
Yeah.
What was the question we're asking?
So we are looking at potentially making a rent reduction, and the reason we're really looking at this because the length of the closure is going to be so long. So we're trying to figure out a happy medium here between T-hanger tenants and what we can do for them, because we do realize that they're paying 3 months and essentially not being able to use our facility.
Sure. I think this has already been mentioned, when we talked about it last night, that abatement does set some precedent because for your size of airport, your level of activity, based aircraft, that kind of thing, rent abatement is typically something that does not happen on these airports. When you get into big commercial situations where economic output is important, in-plane passengers is important, then those things kind of enter the picture. I think you guys are framing it in a good way in that it is a port cost if they won't participate in something like this because it is classified as ineligible. The equity, when we talk about how you spread around that money, in this kind of situation, because it's not an FAA eligible expense, and it hits the edges of where this sort of equity in, treating airport tenants kind of on the same footing. Because it's kind of at the edges of that, I think it's really going to be up to the commission how you guys would like to spread those dollars around. As an obligated airport, obviously you want to have something that's defensible and makes sense, reduces costs. But in the end, because FAA is not participating in those costs, the scenario you use can be as complicated or as simple as you like. It could be 50%. It could be based on flight hours. I do think that it's going to be tough for folks to kind of walk up with their logbooks and open those, and it will add a lot of time and expense to base it on activity. But again, this is something that is, I hate to use the word unprecedented, but it's not a common thing that we see. And so, especially on airports for your size and type, you're kind of deciding for yourselves what works the best for your tenants, with an eye to kind of treating people fairly across the board.
James, I got a question for you. In regards to runway closures, what does that typically look like for airports of our size? Is ours a lot longer? That's been my understanding. It's quite a bit longer. And that's kind of part of my justification for wanting to do something. So I was curious, is a typical closure a month, 2 months, 3 months? Are we way longer than normal? Maybe just talk about that a little bit.
So really, it's very scope driven. It depends on what the project would look like. And especially with your airport, let's just look at your airport in the context of what sort of FAA has asked us to do with your runway in this project over the project formulation period and through design. There was a number of iterations of what this project could have looked like. Originally we were thinking this was going to be a maintenance overlay inlay before we got into design, where it might be more like Aurora was last summer, where it was like a 30, 45-day duration. On the other end of that spectrum, FAA came to us and said, hey, this is a shed section runway. We need to correct it, build a crown in there. You're going to have to regrade half of the airport. A project like that on your airport might take 5-6 months to get through. It might take multiple construction seasons. There's also some scenarios that were brought up locally where, a phased approach with displaced thresholds and work on part of the runway and coming back and doing the rest, partial closures, that kind of thing was contemplated. That gets into, the 4 or 5 month range as well. So really it depends on phasing, it depends on scoping, but even in the context of your own airport, a 90-day closure at max is very reasonable for the effort that we're putting in here. It's very much driven by the electrical system and the efforts that are required there to, in the soils that you guys have present at the airport, trench for conduit and cans and do that kind of thing. It's a very cobbly soil. It takes a lot of effort. They can't plow conduit into the ground. It requires digging. And it's probably going to take a lot of removal of boulders and cobbles and things like that as they encounter them in the trenches. So you've also got elements of this project include full reconstruct of the last 800 feet of the runway, as Pete described last night for the folks in attendance. That's a big effort. We're going to dirt on the runway for that last bit because it's progressed in its sort of pavement life to the end. It needs to be fully replaced. And that takes a significantly longer amount of time than sort of the mill and fill maintenance option that we originally had come to FAA with that looks more like a 30 or 45-day duration. So we span the whole kind of spectrum of closure times here, but this 90-day closure is pretty typical for the level of effort, and maybe even a little aggressive for the level of effort that we put out there for bid for the contracting community to look at. A couple of similar ones, very recently, we shut down Cape Blanco for 120 days to rehabilitate that runway and add a new electrical system. Last summer, we finished up in Siletz Bay. These are smaller, less traveled airports, of course, but that work was a new runway in a similar fashion, reconstructing parts of it, sort of doing a maintenance work on part of it, and then adding a new electrical system. That took 90 days. So the level of effort is, I think, commensurate. That runway in Siletz Bay, for instance, that 90-day closure was on a shorter runway. So there was actually overall less effort, but a similar scope being applied to that shorter runway. So we are being a little more aggressive here in Scappoose with the amount of time that we're allowing the contractor to do the work in. But I think it's reasonable, and it's really what FAA would give us. When we come back and we say to replace the runway in Scappoose will take 60 days. They start getting skeptical with us and they want to know, break that down for us. Can you actually get it done in 60 days? Can you get through the electrical in 60 days? And so there's a back and forth that happens in those processes, as well as with things like liquidated damages and phasing and stuff like that. So we found the sweet spot at 90 days max with the level of effort, the scope required, the conditions that you have in the field, and really all the elements of the work that are going into this project.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
I have one more question, James. Can you get a little deeper on whether or not it would damage our relationship with FAA if we did not across the board rebate rent, but rather based it on flying?
They're not going to wade into the details on your distribution of say, rent abatement in that way. I don't think that would be an interesting precedent that FAA would set for themselves. They usually don't dive that deep into things. When you're talking about equity in the airport sort of rent community, lease community, looking at where costs are being and revenue is generated on the airport, that's where they tend to spend most of their energy in terms of looking at that equity across users. So when you get to the runway, have the folks that access that runway, are they on a similar level playing field, between leases on field and, the conditions surrounding those versus, say through the fence. They spend a little bit more time there. Is it are large hangar tenants on equal footing with T hangar tenants and sort of the scale and scope of what they're paying for versus the benefits that they're getting on the field? That's tend to be more where they dive into it. So in this case, I kind of started out with this a little bit. The commission really has the latitude to decide how you want to abate rent for your tenants.
Okay, thank you.
I think I would be ready to make a motion.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to consider the fact that they will have access. They won't be able to fly. They can still access their T hangar, similar to folks that have boat houses.
Right.
What do? Sometimes they just go down there and hang out. We see that a lot at the airport. It's a nice day out there. It's a beautiful view. People like to go down to their man cave, person cave, and hang out. If it's 70-ish tenants that have the 100-ish T hangars, 40% of those that are potentially flying is about 28 or 30 people that we may potentially look at applications for abatement. I think that having them go through that process would be prudent. You have to show that you're flying, or because some of them are going to be like, we're just throwing our plane out there. We want to get back into flying maybe next year, maybe the next year after that, but we got this hangar. We're glad to have it there. It's cheap-ish, right? Some of them we know are using them as storage units still. So to blanketly abate all of them when they still actually have access to it seems a little bit.
What I'm hearing is you're good with the administrative resources that would be needed.
I may take heat from that, but.
Trying to put me on the spot.
Yeah, that's kind of was one of my asks too. Like, I don't want to, I literally didn't know the number of people out there. I don't want you to get 100 applications, like, yeah, by the way. So if we're good with that, if it's 28 people, sounds like Sean's volunteered to do it. So works for me. So yeah, so
I'm going to make a motion that we abate up to 1 month through an application process that shows that they have been actively flying for T hangar rent to offset the inconvenience for the runway closure.
I would agree with that if we modify it to 6 weeks, give them half.
Go to second and then discuss, right?
yeah, we have to have a second discussion.
So she can
second, and then amended to be half.
That works.
I'll try the motion.
It's 6 weeks now.
6 weeks of rent abatement for T hangar tenants, through an application process that shows that they have been flying, to be administered by port staff. It doesn't sound like we have the ability to do that through the airport advisory committee right now, so I'd say just staff bringing it directly to us. Am I missing anything in that motion? With a cap of $46,000 to give us a little space. It was 91,000, right?
Quick math in my head, I think we.
I don't think there's any way it could even get near that with 28 tenants. I mean, could give them, yeah.
Don't you think we
Fine, though.
need some figures before we actually start making concrete decisions? That would make me feel a lot more comfortable, but if you feel like,
I'm comfortable. If there's roughly 28 tenants, we have very ballpark numbers. We're trying to, I mean,
That was executive director math, by the way. I just say that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I can come back with numbers next meeting.
so do we need to do it in this meeting?
I'd like to get it out of the way.
as well.
I was just putting a cap, assuming 100% of T hangar tenants applied, which is obviously not going to be the case. I didn't want to have to come back and modify or anything like that. I don't think we're going to hit that.
She could come back in May with a memo of what was done. That'd be helpful.
Sure, I just would like this motion, even though they're rough numbers, we have a very general idea, so this could get put out to the public. And then we could get the ball rolling here, because my fear would be to do this late, then everybody's gonna apply late, and then you're gonna be dealing with it late.
We have marina issues next month to deal with.
Exactly. If everybody's comfortable with it, I'm okay with moving forward with it. If I do understand what you're saying though.
Well, if you feel like there's not going to be a big whoops, when we find out, if we find out that we've either got, it's not a worry if we're under, but it's certainly a big worry if we're over.
I don't feel like it's mathematically possible from what I'm gathering here, so I
Okay.
think we're gonna be okay. So do we want to restate the motion one more time? And you're getting good now. I mean, you're getting good. Come on, and lock in.
6 week, T hangar rental abatement, for up to $46,000 via an application process that shows, that these tenants have been flying their aircraft
Flying her
actively.
within the last 12 months.
Active flying to be determined by port staff.
To be determined by port staff. That was what I really.
Yeah.
Amy's a wordsmith. Okay, we got it.
Yeah, I want to leave some flexibility.
We have a second on that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Thank you for working with me on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Lee.
Yeah. The second point, takeaway from last night, there was 2 takeaways. Okay.
Yeah, rent
Thank you.
abatement and, an understanding of the project.
And don't leave yet, because
Uh-oh.
really kudos to you. You handled that so well. I was so proud to be a commissioner watching how professional our staff acted in last night's meeting. And same to James and Peter. The level of conversation was much appreciated.
Nancy.
Thank you, Lacey. I know that's more work and I apologize, I think. So, yeah, in advance. Yes. Yeah.
Big snails.
Jackets.
Yes. Okay, we've got through our old business. We're on to new business. Guy Glenn, operating budget discussion.
Good morning, commissioners. Still morning, I think.
Beautiful beaver dog drone footage there.
Oh,
All right, we'll get started. Moving into the operating budget. We did the capital budget in March, 2 times. So we'll move on next. Just a reminder on the budget process. We'll move into the budget committee later this month, and in May and in June will be the public hearing and adoption of the budget. And so we're just presenting this to gather any feedback you have. Next slide. This is a little more detail on the upcoming dates. And I just want to remind you that these dates aren't on the same day as our regular commission meetings, and they're at 1 o'clock. Again, we've talked about managing reserves. Our current fund balance is up there. And then looking at a 5-year capital plan, kind of mapping out what our projects will be over the next 5 years. Next. This is what I'll go over today, and I'll be looking at FY25 performance numbers. So we're kind of looking back almost a year on those numbers because we haven't completed FY26 yet, a couple more months. So I'll look at operating revenue and expenses, non-operating revenue, budgetary pressure and challenges, a little more on the capital, major maintenance and financial trends. Next. Let me do a little explaining on this slide. I know it can be a little deceiving, but I excluded uncollected revenue from Next and non-operating revenue, like interest income, grants, and insurance recovery. And this data is not inflation adjusted, and it's based on annual figures, not cumulative. So on the operating revenue, it's flat to declining. So there's kind of a hump in there, but it's I'm just taking the data, and meanwhile the expenses are increasing over the same time frame by about $2 million. And as you can see, this trend is concerning. What if operating expenses continue to rise without growing operating revenue? This is a trend that most states and local governments are experiencing. There's quite a bit of concern on, even here in St. Helens, I guess they're furloughing on Fridays for some or all of the employees. And so we're not uncommon or different than many other local governments. Next. So this is a graph of our current assets, which are like liquid cash, things that can be used right away, not fixed assets like property or buildings and things like that. And then the orange line is interest income. And you can see that with rising the insurance settlements we've received, the balances have gone up on our current assets, and the interest income has gone up along with the asset growth and the higher interest rates over the past few years. So, but as we deplete those insurance funds, and if rates were to fluctuate downward, this non-operating income would decrease. Next. And just looking at our budget performance areas, couple of things I like to talk about here. This is a pie chart of the different sites. And so this is our budgeted amounts for this year. And you can see, if it's not too small for you, the percentages for each part of the pie for each site. And where can we grow operating revenue and reduce operating expenses when we look at per site, per business line. And so it's a question we have to ask is to get into a little more detail. And then on the subsidy, being aware of subsidizing specifically the marina, both capital and operating expenses. I understand there's other factors to consider, but as your finance manager, I feel obligated to provide an objective analysis. And also, I wanted to bring this up just for kind of more urgent question for you. Maybe we can wait, talk about it at the end, but on marina rates this year, we typically do the CPI increases, but given everything that's going on, I think we should consider increasing those rates to more closer to the market for the period beginning July 1st of this year. Right now, we don't know the outcome of the private operator alternative, and that'll have to be, like you've mentioned earlier, there's some swings in the budget that could occur there, but we kind of need to look at both options. And I also want to mention that capital improvements for the marina were not included in the capital budget. So any additions we make there will impact our ability to do other projects in the future and or our reserves. So and then on asset preservation, that kind of goes along with the capital budget. You know, which sites are going to require the most maintenance and repair improvements just to preserve those assets so they can continue to generate revenue or maybe even increase or enhance their revenue.
What's the railroad corridor? I know it's a smaller amount of money. What is that?
River Avenue,
the rail yard at Hopital.
This is the industrial park.
It's where Blue Heron.
That piece. Okay, gotcha.
So it's a relatively.
The corridor threw me off there. Gotcha.
Oh, that was up down.
Yeah.
So, any other questions on this slide? Next. Just
Scappoose Airport, did you take into account the changes that are going to be made?
That's the 2026 budget. I haven't put 20.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
To clarify on the marina rates, are you talking about moorage and floating homes, boathouses, that sort of thing, not the launch fees?
Correct.
Okay.
Just a little review on the reserves. Financial reserves, they're basically in two buckets. I'll go into a little more review of those on the next slide, but they're both insurance for unplanned events that could be, you know, where we need cash flow to do a repair or if we have lots of revenue, operating revenue. And then the other reserves are for planned projects. So it's kind of like a savings account. Next slide. And this is the details from our last presentation in March. Shows the operating reserve, the strategic reserve, which are the ones we just talked about. And then the 5-year capital budget is anywhere from 16.5 million to 18.5 million. And that includes grant funding that's non-operating cash. And those are just grants that are approved right now. We don't know what future grants we may secure. And it also assumes break-even budget performance on operating. So if we continue to, you know, potentially have more expenses than revenue, we could be dipping into our reserves there as well. And then it also assumes the annual property tax collections like we had in the last capital budget presentation. Next slide. And And this is for the upcoming budget, looking at operational revenue and expense growth. And as you can imagine, the revenue for would go up less than the expenses. So I've used the CPI roughly rate, or, you know, what we could adjust our regular operating revenue to is anywhere from 2.7 to 3.2%. CPI right now is around 2.8. And on expenses, this is a figure I pulled off for local governments around the country. That range is anywhere from 6 to 7.5% on expenses.
Can I ask you a question about that? So if I'm understanding correctly, CPI is expected to be somewhere in the 3% range, but our actual increase in expenses, you're expecting to be over double that. So CPI is not keeping up with our increase in expenses.
And that's not uncommon.
Okay.
It never has, right?
Well, that's the problem, even with cities, counties and stuff, it's more difficult for them to raise revenue. But you know, we're more enterprising, we can create other revenue generating sources that are not available to the cities and counties that are doing water systems or, you know, street, you know, things that are, they're not as nimble as you are, so we do have an opportunity to look at revenue generation. Definitely want to sustain the current revenue we have in the tenants. And then supplemental sources of funding, again, non-operating income, like grants, interest income, and property taxes collected. Those all supplement our operating revenue. So
One more question on the expenses. Sorry to hammer it a little bit. So we obviously have expenses that can't control, you know, good cost of goods and services and whatnot. Is the rest of the increase tied to stuff that we have to do from a maintenance standpoint, or
maintenance?
Want to understand that number a little bit more?
Maintenance and stuff, materials and services can vary from year to year. And it just depends on what projects we're working on, which ones we don't work on. So it's, you know, it's a moving target, but just in general for budgeting purposes, that's the range we should consider. Does that answer?
Yeah, I think so.
Any other questions? Next. Just, this is nothing new to you, but the economic impact of the port and the county, all of our lines of businesses there, and just, you know, a reminder, we're going to retain and create jobs, and that graphic there on the right side is from our 2024 strategic business plan. Next. And just, this is my last slide, but a review. We just want to think about our operating revenue and expenses, look at our budgetary pressures and challenges. And, you know, there's obviously hard decisions that have to be made. And, you know, I'm just trying to be objective. I'm not trying to color code anything, but in the capital and major maintenance budget, we've got a lot of assets that need attention, and that's going to be an ongoing challenge for us. And then we have to look at our reserve funds and just stability of our revenue sources. So, and so coming up next will be budget committee meetings. The first one on April 29th, again at 1 p.m. And I'll have a more detailed budget to present there for FY27, but these are some of the historical performance numbers, and then some of the topics we'll be focusing on for the budget. So any other questions?
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, guys. Lindsay. Community giving program.
It's a fun one. I'm happy to announce the 2 recipients today for the community giving program. And I wanted to remind you guys that we agreed on $1,000 total, $2,000 twice per year. And the first round due March 1st, announced at the April Commission meeting today. And the second round will be due September 1st with awards announced in October. I wanted to amend that one and push that back to actually August 1st, because there's so many fall events and it's such a small amount, it's really suitable for events. So if that's okay with everyone, I'm gonna go ahead and amend that. Okay. And then we'll announce it at the September meeting. So we received 5 strong applications this time. Honestly, they were all wonderful. We, as agreed upon, we had 2 commissioners, Ward and Sorber, and then the port staff who collectively decided on the recipients. And the first recipient is the Clatskanie Farmer Collective for the Clatskanie Kids Market. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. Taking place in June alongside the Clatskanie Farmers Market, this event serves approximately 25 youth vendors, 40 adult vendors, and draws around 1,200 visitors. This will be the 2nd year. The Kids Market provides youth ages 5 to 17 with opportunity to showcase and sell handmade goods, farm products, and creative projects. They receive one-on-one support to develop their products, set their pricing, and set up their booth. Beyond the event itself, it builds kids' confidence, economic literacy, and real-world business skills. Last year, the youth vendors generated $1,400, even in challenging weather. So we all thought that was a really neat one. And congratulations to them. They're probably not listening, but I will reach out to them today to let them know. And then our second recipient is the Amani Center in support of their 18th annual Race Against Child Abuse that takes place later this month. And I'll go back. The Clatskanie Kids Market asked for 1,000. It was up to 1,000. So they asked for 1,000. This one, they only asked for 750. So we're going to leave that other 250 kind of in the pot for next time to either have a larger award or accumulate some for an additional at some point. And the Race Against Child Abuse is April 25th in St. Helens. It's a 10K, 5K, a 1-mile family walk, and a virtual participation option, bringing together members of the community. And I think we're all familiar with the Amani Center. So congratulations to them. The other thing I was going to say is that we had 3 other really strong applications that we are going to encourage them to simply reapply for the next round because they were very suitable. So do you have any questions for me? Anyone?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
That's a difficult process. Nice job.
Yeah.
I appreciate the split between North County, doing one in North County, one in South County. So thank you both for sure. Yeah.
Got that on the screen there. If you didn't get it.
Oh. What?
That's okay. I got it.
That's it.
I got it here. Just talk through it. Okay, my calendar's there. I will.
Longer and longer. You're booked out here.
So definitely send it out to you guys electronically as well. The Department of Reports will be attached to that as well. Some things that kind of stood out here in the last month. We had Representative Bonamici came out to Port Westford for a tour. If you saw my screen here, you'll see Commissioner Sorber and County Commissioner Kelly Jo Smith on Port Westford Beaver Dock with Representative Bonamici. That was a good visit. She had some good questions about the project and the dock and what we're doing out there. Yesterday, we participated, Amy and I, in North Coast Regional Solutions team call to discuss the Governor's Prosperity Council proposal or the plan that she'd put out with Tim Knoop. And we had about 21 people on the call and give some feedback and some concerns to send back to the governor. A lot of it boils down to regulatory issues and things that cause projects to go away because of time. That seemed to be a common theme throughout there. And then we were able to also, Mike Sandin from Port of Garibaldi was able to talk about ports and infrastructure funding and there being no dredging, dedicated funding for dredging for all these small marinas, ours included. And the fact that we have other infrastructure, aging infrastructure besides dredging, which is, transportation infrastructure for a lot of ports. So beating that drum, we're going to keep continuing to beat that drum for ports because we know we're competing with other modes of transit for grant programs. And of course, then the federal grants are, port-wide across the country. We're all competing for those pots of money as well. So hopefully with any luck and sometime in the near future, I say that we know the state's budget's what it is as well. At some point, we would love to have some dedicated things. So we'll keep working to that end through the association, Oregon Public Ports Association and otherwise.
Now your slide's up.
Oh, okay. Let's go to that next one there. And yeah, there bottom right corner is Commissioner Sorber and Commissioner Kelly Jo Smith with Representative Bonamici. And there's Elliot there on the Beaver Dock. You can see we're looking at the replaced or the damaged area that was replaced on the dock. Go ahead, the next slide. Okay, yeah, the next public comment for the EIS was a 2-day fiasco. I will say it was not a fiasco. It was really well done and a lot of good comments on either side of the argument. And the Corps will hopefully stay on track and be able to issue their decision here soon, which I think we're targeting a month out or so. So
I listened and yeah, Ryan, great job. Yeah.
Thank you. I attended both. I would maybe dispute the really well done.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
There was definitely some technical issues with
Flunky.
just one person. It was across the board. Yeah, which was unfortunate, but it sounded like most people eventually through calling in instead of using Teams got to have their comments. So I would agree. There was a lot of good comments.
Probably went longer than it needed to because of those.
Yes. Yeah.
Both days.
And Sean, you made excellent comments as well.
Thank you. Thanks.
I don't know if we have any pull in this, but to me, it was unfortunate that we never saw the people who were running the meeting. They never showed their faces. And to me, it would have been nice.
Took away from a little bit.
Yeah. And the same with people who are commenting. They have that capability. Why are they not using it? So.
Well, they couldn't get the microphones working. I agree with you. Yeah. I just have no people for that stuff. I can't do it.
We met with Sierra and Ben at City of Scappoose, Sierra Trask and Ben Bird. They've stood up some of the programs from CET, right? They're taking on Grow and Keep It Local and Business Retention Recovery and Small Business Resource Development Center. Had a good conversation with them that talked about the enterprise zone stuff. And like I mentioned to some of you before the meeting, I think the recommendation is going to be for one zone manager for both zones. But Ben and I talked, and the administrative burden is pretty low. So probably keep it separate just to keep them out of our business and us out of theirs. And as we know, the lower Columbia Maritime Enterprise Zone is mostly port property plus Rainier and some area of Alaska. So it would make sense for us to manage that one. And Amy's been talking with folks that run enterprise zones and found out that it isn't too bad of an administrative burden. So we would angle for that. Currently, we're in a transition point where this gentleman, Art Fish, who used to work for Business Oregon, is doing the transition of the enterprise zone, but also currently working to add some area into the lower Columbia Maritime Zone to include the Scion lumber site. So we'll see a resolution for that next month. Anyway, they're doing some really good things. They branded it the Columbia Business Alliance, and I'm sure they'll be looking for some funding similar to CET. So we'll come to you with some ideas on that, what we think our contributions could be.
And what's happening with tourism?
Tourism, we're going to make the play for that. Right now, travels, they're very busy right now doing their road shows and budgeting. They made it clear that they will be reaching back out when they're ready to. So we nudge a little bit, but they're pumping the brakes and saying, we'll get back to you. We talked about that with Ben and Sierra as well. They have no problem with the port taking on the tourism if we wanted to. It makes more sense for us than them, in that we're closer to countywide than they are.
And Willa's still good with hanging in there till this.
So far, yeah. I mean, hopefully she doesn't get another job here soon, but yeah, she would be happy to help us with that effort too.
How do we anticipate or what's our ability to serve the whole county in that respect?
I think we would do an IGA with, like, say, Vernonia, essentially. Maybe Columbia County, I guess, run unincorporated if we thought it was necessary, but.
Is the funder okay with that? Where the money, because previously I've heard that I think Travel Oregon is not too excited about a depot that to not represent the whole area.
I would defer to actually talking to them in person because I haven't actually had those conversations. I've only heard second and third hand, some of that. So I have not had direct conversations other than an email that they came back and said that they were taking a pause right now. So
yeah, just before we go too far down the road, I'd be curious if they're open to that. Obviously, if they're not going to fund it, we don't want to waste a whole bunch of time figuring out if we can do it or not.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, dependent upon the funding for sure. We met the new Longview CEO, as they call him over there. I put the executive director on here, Ken Anderton. He actually is former Port of Portland person. Nice gentleman. Looks like, he's landed himself a good gig over there. Longview's, they're busy over there. They do a lot. And I think he's a good guy for them. Just trying to find some synergies. We're going to do some more road shows and tours of some other industrial parks, small industrial parks that some of our friends across the river have, Woodland and Kalama, and kind of get our ideas flowing on some of, we get to I know we're a little ahead of the game because of the budget stuff, but still kind of the idea of hopefully making a spec building at some point, because a lot of the inquiries that Amy gets and a lot of stuff through Business Oregon is, they want a building, at least a minimum, a building of some certain size and then a certain amount of land. And if we had a building, boy, it should be nice to be able to market that. I don't think it would last very long. But we gotta wait, get our financial position a little bit better on that. And of course, if you guys want us to switch our budgetary priorities and work on something like that, we can do that as well. So last night they had the open house. I opted not to attend. We had good representation there, and I appreciate the staff, their excellent work in representing us. Thank you to the board. And next slide. Okay, yeah, we got 100K for the Recreation Ready grant, and that's a planning grant that we will decide how we're going to use on potential marina and ADA improvements that we're continuing to do down there. Through some excellent work by Elliot and working with our claims manager, we have got another $300,000 through the SDIS dock claim. So Elliot had really fostered a good relationship there, and it paid off big time because there was very collaborative back and forth spreadsheets. He's got sheets that are crazy deep formulas and stuff. So really appreciate that. And big one, this is the property insurance billing sent out to all the tenants. As you know, we have to collect for that, and that's a big lift on accounting. So thanks to them for getting that out. And the big news, Ellie, again, working some great magic, staying connected with our contacts at Next and CPBR, got them to commit to help with our 25% match for this next round of Connect. So that was great. That was right under the wire, actually, as far as getting those letters of commitment before the application was submitted. And thanks to Lindsay and Elliot for working so hard on that. What's the total on that, Elliot?
10.15.
10.15 million.
5% commitment for the tenants, or asking for the 2.5 we talked about that last commission meeting.
So that's that we'd love to get that. Again, we do a lot of efforts on these grants, and fingers are crossed. And the last thing I want to report on, thank you, Sam, you can take that down, is the fact that I'm supposed to notify you of contracts for over 100,000. We have had Dave Matsuda helping us with several grant applications now, and he part of his contract was allowing to help for additional grants. And so we've amended his contract from 111, I think, to 138,000. And I'm supposed to notify you guys of that. So I will send that out also by email. And so this is how many grants has he assisted us on now?
4. I think 4. Yeah, and this would get us up to a 5th.
Or up to a 5th assistance on our, mostly the federal has been the bigger lift. Okay.
Is this just because I'm unaware? Is this somebody you guys have been working with for some time?
Yes, he's a former maritime administrator, so he's very well placed. See, and
Understood. Okay.
but he.
Federal grants, we've received none to date, right?
That's correct. Yep, but we haven't heard on most of them, so.
Right. Oh, good.
From Tech got withdrawn, PDIP is pending. We did hear on the rural tribal assistance grant, that we were not successful on, it was a $2.5 million ask. And then build is still pending as well.
Check and build.
Yeah. So EPA also, even though he didn't.
Yeah, he wasn't involved, yeah, he's
Thank you. I was
just working on our doc, for Westwood Grant.
That's my report. Have any questions?
Well, thank you. I do not have any. Does anybody else have any questions?
Mission to Washington coming up this month. There'll be myself, Lindsay, and Bob will be out from that week of 20th, Tuesday to the 23rd.
Couple of comments, just looking through the calendar, I was gonna say, Rainier Chamber has a meeting tomorrow as well. So I know Elliot usually attends those, so. And then in regards to a couple of the other items, the enterprise zone, I've heard some feedback on that around sponsors being the enterprise zone manager and that being a potential conflict of interest due to our ability, if we were the manager, to pick and choose what projects would be part of the enterprise zone. It might not actually be that, but it appears that way. So I'd be real curious how other zone sponsors might feel about that if we were to move forward as the manager.
Something for the port's benefit.
If we're only pushing forward projects that would be on port property, I don't think we would do that, but it is something that could definitely, if we didn't move forward a project that was not located on port property, it might cause some real consternation, so.
Should certainly do our due diligence on that.
Yeah.
Sure that we're not.
Maybe part of the agreement that we come up with zone sponsors is if it involves a port property, we don't vote maybe, or I'm not.
Recuse
Yeah,
ourselves.
might recuse from that or.
That'd be most of them though.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, as far as the Lower Columbia one, I believe, I don't know exactly what the South County one, that's like.
I was just in favor of the Lower Columbia one because as you stated, that's mostly our property down there.
Yeah.
So I felt like we should be the one kind of.
I feel like an acknowledgement or a disclosure like we do at each time would be enough. I do believe, it doesn't hurt to ask, but I do believe the city of Clatskanie for sure, last time I talked to them, was grateful not to have to manage.
Yeah.
Understood.
The other concern there is a lot of I think there's 10% admin set aside from the abatement, which is a really nice funding source for any future replacement for CET. And I think if we were to be the enterprise zone manager, I would prefer it to be in the interim to allow that to transition back to an economic development organization.
Whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the Betterment Fund or whatever?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Betterment.
Yeah. So I think an economic development organization is really, really important, and having a kind of seed funding available for that from enterprise zone applications would be helpful.
I kind of like it to cover our costs, but I hear you.
We could have discussion surrounding. Yeah.
You know, obviously we would have admin costs if we're doing it. I don't think it would be anywhere near the amount that the Betterment Fund provides. So I think set aside for the admin costs, but you know, for instance, I think I did the math on this previously. If there was a $35 million project that went in, say that typically would, I think that would result in about $160,000 or $170,000 a year in the Betterment Fund. That's probably well above and beyond what our admin costs would be to manage that. And I think setting aside some of that money for a future economic development organization would be helpful.
There goes my revenue source that I was looking to get. Okay. All right.
Well, we should certainly.
You know, I could talk about what we do with that money because it is a revenue source, but it is also meant to be a betterment fund.
Understood.
And some, so you know, I imagine you know this, Brian, some zone managers take that betterment fund and give it to the taxing districts in the interim while they're being abated or they're getting their deferment, so.
Yeah, I know the school districts that have had that money come to them and stuff like that. Should be really careful that if we go that route. It's a pretty complex thing. So I think there's a lot to consider there.
I'm just interested in what's the long-term goal we're trying to achieve here? Now that CET is gone, are we just looking for someone else to step in and be another CET? Or are we actually looking for something a little different? And I'm a little confused about where we think we're going after this conversation that we're having right now.
That's something, conversations I'm not involved in, so I can't answer that.
I don't think we had issue with the structure of CET. It fell apart. Structure didn't.
Yeah,
Well, to me, the big issue was what did CET actually accomplish? And not to say that they didn't try very, very hard, but considering the temperature of the nation right now, what is actually going to be possible for any organization that's put together?
I think what Brian, I don't want to speak for Brian, but, you know, obviously it would benefit everyone if some type of economic team was working, you know, for the betterment of the community, I think is it. And we don't have one yet. If one was banded out of nowhere, sure, we'd ever be in support of that, I think. To your, you know, who knows, right? Where
I would add to that. We could probably go back and forth about the benefits of CET or not.
Oh, of course.
But I think where I would more land is a private organization doing economic development in the county or the region is a generally well accepted thing in most areas and is done throughout the state. And I think there is benefit there if it's ran properly. We're only 6 miles from the river. Our service area doesn't include all of the county, you know, so I don't think us acting as the economic development organization is necessarily.
Yeah, not what I'm saying.
County, but a private organization, if it were to be propped back up, I think would be beneficial to the county if it ran right.
I just don't see anybody pushing that. It would have to come from us probably, because the county's not gonna push it.
we could potentially foster it and get it to somewhere. Yeah, agreed.
And this is down the road, a couple of years, right? Still dealing with the aftermath of CET folding, but I do expect that there would be a push for that in a few years or something like that. I think, you know.
Understood.
Yeah, part of that too, Brian, and for you all is we don't really know yet what the interest level is going to be for non-port properties that, you know, we're currently going to be fielding a lot of these industrial calls through this Oregon and things.
Yep.
So once we start trying to put together deals for non-port property, we figure out how much of a burden potentially it might be. That's when we're going to be like, gosh, we could use maybe this entity, but how often is it going to happen to us?
It currently hasn't been a problem.
My understanding is, as far as enterprise zone stuff goes, there's some choices that the enterprise zone manager can make as to who to offer that to, who to make aware of that, right? And that is, I think, those choices have actively happened in the past, and it does put us in a little bit of a tricky situation. I think there's probably not an appetite to offer that to each and every potential applicant, and so we would be making those choices, and that's
understood.
Difficult.
I think another important point to make, not to take away from the economic agencies here, but the port's mission is not limited to marketing port properties. I mean, we're the economic development is a part of our charter and a PUD charter as well.
Yeah.
Regardless of whose property, I've always told constituents, you have a property that meets port functions, uses infrastructure, transportation, rail, the port should know about it and have it on their queue.
Great point. Is there any more on that? We flip the commissioner,
like Scotty Parker's.
Those were the things other than, I would love to get these ahead of time so I can review and ask questions and that sort of thing. I don't know where others lie on that, but in general, it's tough to read through it in the meeting.
Yeah.
Commissioner reports. Brian.
I think I covered all of it. I did it in my first airport advisory committee meeting, and that was interesting and difficult. There was some good conversation that happened there, and just look forward to continuing to be a part of that. Sorry I missed out on last night. It wasn't in the cards for me, but looking forward to continued learning and engagement with the airport advisory committee.
Yeah, thank you.
Robert. I appreciate the folks that came in both for the marina and the airport today. That was helpful to me. And to Mayor Cole, I would say I appreciate you looking out for airport tenants. If elected as a county commissioner, you'll have many, many more opportunities to save constituents money. Including the new development fees are proposing, so.
Sure, I attended the marina meeting this last Monday. It was rather brief. We got a complicated little diagnosis of how much it was costing us to do it by actual human activity. And so it will charge our discussion further. Thank you. It was well done.
Nancy?
Yes, and we've talked about the airport a lot in this meeting, and I would say that with the marina and the airport, what is being brought to us from the public is something that shouldn't be discounted and shouldn't be taken for granted. We've got some people with expertise, and Mr. Toski, thank you very much for being the conduit that brought Peter to our attention. And just like Scott coming in here for the airport issue, here's somebody from the public who is willing to put money to help us improve a project because he's going to benefit from it. And the expertise and the ideas of people who are in the business, whether it's recreational or whether it's commercial, is so valuable. And I just really appreciate the fact that we seem to finally be getting people coming forward and communicating with us and working with us. And I think it's energizing, it's fun, and hopefully it's very beneficial to the port in the long run.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you. I also attended the same meeting Chip did. Very exciting. We got to meet Peter and his wife. Hope that heads to a direction that we like. Thank all the staff for their hard work. Lacey, sounds like you've been busy. Elliot as well. Thanks everybody else if I missed anybody. So that's all I got. We're in with no executive session today. So I know you guys are bummed. Get it? But a meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.